Now these bacteria that you want are anaerobic. That means that they do not like oxygen. They would rather work without oxygen. So that any time you're doing any kind of pickling or fermentation, make sure that there's always liquid covering it. If you've got anything poking its head out, it's going to go grey and there's a potential that bad things are going to happen. So because of that, you can buy expensive airlock devices, and I don't think that's necessary at all. What I do is find a plate that almost fits the top. So I put that in, press it down as hard as I can. The wonderful plastic wrap. There we go. Then I put the plastic wrap into there and make sure that I scoot it up to the very edges so that although the plate doesn't cover everything entirely, the plastic wrap is filling the gap. So I'll just tip that up like that, and you can see that I've plastic wrapped it, just poked those into there just to cover everything, no oxygen. But of course gas is going to be given off and you want that to escape, so it's just a kind of a balance between letting out the gas and keeping the oxygen out. And this is my device that I have worked out, and it works really, really well. What you need is for this size jars, I've got a large one, a bag like this, and you're going to fill it up 1/3 with water. I mean, this is the Kiwi way of doing it. Do it yourself. I thought to myself, do I import one of these special expensive things all the way from America? No, we'll just do it this way. So fill it up about 1/3, and if you want to, you can throw a bit of salt in there because the bag may burst, and at least you've got some salinity going in there. But I have never had a bag burst, because what I do is zip her up really carefully and then hold it up to make sure that nothing is coming out. And then I put it in here, tuck it in, and the water of course fills in all of your wee gaps. And I've made sure of course that the zipper part is uppermost, so because this will eventually leak out, and that is going to sit on the top like that. Just like that. Now, then another piece of Glad wrap, or whatever kind of wrap you have where you live, over the top. Now, if you didn't have a lid, if you could only find one of these jars in your thrift shop or in Granny's garage, then you could not have a lid and just put it over like that and put a string around it, and then maybe a cloth, a tea towel or something on top here just to keep the sunlight out. But mine sits very happily like that. And since I have been doing that, I have never had a failure. Shauna and I did have a failure in one of ours. We opened it up, and just as well she was standing there because my eyesight's not that great, and it was actually moving. And how it happened, I do not know, but somebody got in there and thought it was good enough to lay their eggs. But anyway, this has never happened since we've been doing it like this. It works perfectly well. Now, the next day, you're going to open up your wee lid and have a look in there. And what you're hoping to see is liquid. And because we've used red things in here, you'll see a red, pinky liquid coming up and going over the top of that plate. Now, it doesn't have to be the plate doesn't have to be buried in liquid, but you just want to see that the moisture has come up high enough to go over the top of the plate even a little bit. And that means your sauerkraut is covered. So that's a good sign. And I've got another one down here, which I'm going to try and lift up. This is my bigger pot. And it's heavy. Now I did this one about 5 or 6 days ago, and I'll just get the camera to one of them to come over and have a look into there, and I'll leave this on the bench so you can all have a look, but you can actually see where the pinky liquid is moved over to the top of the plate. So that means this is now good to go. Now it depends on your climate really, but if you're in a cold climate, leave this in your kitchen or a warm place. If you're in a very, very hot climate, leave it a couple of days in your kitchen and then move it out to somewhere where it's cooler. But we're in a straw bale house here and the temperature is pretty temperate here, so I just leave this on the kitchen floor. And it should have done its dash in 3 weeks. And like I said, don't be tempted to take it earlier because you've got to wait till about, I don't know how many different sets of bacteria come in and do something to this before Lactobacillus plantarum can actually be here. But once they arrive, they multiply rapidly. So in about 2 and a bit more weeks, we'll have another jar of sauerkraut. Now, dosage. Just want to say to you to be careful when you first use this stuff. Because if you have a lot of bad bacteria in your gut and this Rambo crowd go in there and start, you can get something called dieback, where the bad bacteria have this massive execution and they let out their toxins and it can make you feel a bit seedy or maybe a bit of nausea, a bit of diarrhea, a bit of muscle pain, your skin might break out. And it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, but just note that that could happen. Drink lots of water, take a bit of vitamin C, ride it out. But don't have to have that happen, just start out 1 tablespoon and give yourself a go with it. Don't just say, oh, this stuff's great, let's get out 2 cups of it. Because you just might pay a price for doing that. And I don't want that to happen to you. For children, take it easy, like Shana said, take it easy. You can put a teaspoon is a massive dose for a child. They can put that into a glass of water with a tiny bit of juice or something and they'll never know it's there, and you've done them such a wonderful service. So thank you very much for that. We were going to now move on and show you how to make pickles. Does anybody have any questions regarding this part of it? Yes?
I noticed that you used red cabbage predominantly.
Yes.
Is there a reason why red cabbage? Is it better than your normal green?
It's because that's what I had growing in my garden. I don't think it matters. You could use your crinkly Savoy cabbage. You can use the Asian Chinese cabbage if you wanted to, as long as it's cabbage, because cabbage has a massive amount of these bacteria on the outside of them waiting for use. So if you're going to use carrots and all those other things, they're just a little bit of an add-on, but the main event is a cabbage. So yes.
And also, does it matter if the cabbage has been harvested a week or so ago, because a lot of vegetables when you buy them from a normal shop or supermarket have already been harvested for quite a length of time before you even bring them home, then you leave them on your shelf for a week or so.
Okay. The answer to that is it's best to get as fresh and as organic as you can for all your ingredients, but we know that that's not always practical. I don't think for the actual Lactobacillus plantarum it matters as long as your cabbage has life in it. There's something still there, because you're just going to use the bacteria that are on the outside of that cabbage and make them. But if you're looking for a high degree of other nutrients, then they may have dropped down a bit. But in a way that's not so important, because actually those bacteria themselves start producing bacteria themselves. Like for instance, they up the vitamin C level tremendously, so that if you can't afford fruit for your children and you can't afford to buy all these expensive sources of vitamin C, the old cabbage will give you massive doses of it. So that's one of the good things. So I wouldn't be worried too much about the quality of your cabbage, just do the best you can. Anybody else?
I would have thought with something like this that you would serve it kind of as a side, a salad with a meal, and you would scoop out the cabbage and put it on and try and get rid of all the liquid so it doesn't flood the plate. What you were saying though sounded to me like you were saying the liquid is actually more important than the substance that, like the cabbage, which...
They're equally important. The liquid, see, some people discard the liquid thinking, well, that's just the liquid. But it's teeming with life, absolutely teeming with it. I think somebody worked out how many thousands of dollars a cabbage makes in probiotics. like if you had to go and buy that from a chemist or a pharmacy, you know, you just probably couldn't afford it. This is the beauty of this thing. It doesn't matter whether it's the solid part or the liquid part, but just don't throw the liquid part out.
Can we see the finished product?
You will get to see the finished product because we're going to eat it later. The finished product is here, of course, but yeah, we should actually do it. And thank you so much for reminding, because we did this last time with sourdough bread. We've got to show the sliced bread at the end of it, because you know I'm over it already. So yeah, we better do that. Yep. So this is what it looks like. As soon as you've got it harvested out of your container, as soon as you want to break through that oxygen barrier you've got there, you're going to have to store it in the refrigerator. So normally these things were stored in root cellars, which are almost colder than a fridge. So, but we don't have those things here. So take it out of the thing as soon as you've harvested it, put it into a container like this, and pop it into your fridge. And it'll keep for ages and ages and ages there. I mean, it is actually preserved because the level of acidity in here is very, very high now. That's why it's so sour to taste, but it looks fantastic. I think it's fantastic.
So when it starts to go off, it starts to change colour.
Yes, you never want to eat any of these things. If you open it up and you find it stinks, it's gone slimy, then you have going to have to throw it out. And if you've got chickens, they will absolutely love you for it, because they don't care about a bit of slime or a bit of stink. They just love the taste of it, and it's great for their guts as well. I actually do go out there and give it to my hens, because like that, I give it to my goats as well. Probiotics are good for everybody. Thank you for reminding me.
The plastic bag full of water, is that to additional sealant because it fills in all the gaps,
Yes.
or is that a weight thing?
It's both.
It's both.
It's both. If you didn't have the bag full of water, you'd put a rock in there. You know, it does work. But actually what's happened, as soon as you've broken up the cell walls like I did, you're going to find the salt is going to draw it out, and you're going to get a natural filling up of liquid. It's quite amazing, really. If you go in there and you look in the next day and there's no liquid, you haven't pounded long enough. And just another thing, if you look into the container and there's a whole lot of white mould that's puffed up around the edges, it's perfectly harmless. It's just smelly, stinky, slimy that you don't want, but a little bit of white mould is okay. I haven't had it since I've done this method, but my earlier ones did get that white mould, but don't worry about it, just bops on regardless.
So if there wasn't enough liquid the next day, would you take the stuff out and give it a bit more of a bash?
You could take it out and give it a bit more of a bash, but then you could cheat and get a cupful of water, boiled water that has been boiled. Never water with chlorine in it, for the very reason that we said. Take it and put about 1.5 teaspoons of salt in it, and then put that in until you get the level coming up. But remember, next time you just didn't pound it enough, and that's what went wrong.